She thought she married the perfect man, until she woke up to find her company stolen, her name erased, and her life turned into a lie. But that was just the beginning. He didn't just want her business. He wanted control, and someone close to her was helping him. Who can she trust when betrayal hides behind a smile? You're about to witness a story of love, deception, and the courage to fight back. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, let's jump into the story. Nina had always believed in second chances. After losing both parents in a car crash at the age of 22, she took over the family business. With nothing but a tired heart and a sense of duty, the office became her home. Spreadsheets replaced sleep. She smiled for others, but her eyes carried the weight of a world she was not ready to hold. It was on one quiet Tuesday afternoon, during a local charity gala, that she met Callan. He was a charming, kind, and spoke with the calm confidence of someone who had lived 1,000 lives. He offered her a drink, complimented her late father's vision, and asked to see the company headquarters. Nina, flattered and curious, invited him to visit the next day. Their meetings became frequent. Lunches turned into dinners. Weekends turned into shared road trips. He was always thoughtful, never late, always listening, and full of warm words that felt like a safety blanket on her most fragile days. By the 3rd month, he told her he loved her. By the 5th, he asked her to marry him. Her aunt, Mrs. Laurel, who had raised her after her parents passed, was skeptical. She had seen men like Callan before, too smooth, too perfect. "You barely know him," Laurel warned one evening. "There's something in his eyes that speaks louder than his words." But Nina was tired of being alone. She was tired of hearing her own doubts echo through empty rooms. She wanted a new chapter, and Callan made her feel like she was already living it. A small ceremony was planned. Just a few family friends, a sunset, and a promise, 3 days before the wedding. Nina was in a car accident, nothing major, just a side collision at an intersection when a truck ran a red light. She had minor bruises but was otherwise fine. Callan was the first to reach the hospital. He hugged her tightly, kissed her forehead, and asked if she remembered where she had kept the business ownership files. "It's locked in the study drawer," she answered weakly, still groggy from the pain medication. He smiled and said, "Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of everything." That night, Mrs. Laurel visited. She looked at Nina, then at Callan, and her suspicion deepened. The morning after the wedding, Nina woke up feeling uneasy. The house was too quiet. She walked into the study to check on some papers, only to find the drawer empty. Every legal document, every share certificate, every key to her family's legacy, gone. She rushed to her phone and called Callan. It rang once and went to voicemail. "Hi, this is Callan. I'll call you back." He never did. Nina sat on the edge of the bed trying to understand what had just happened. Was she overthinking? Had he moved the files for safety? Maybe he left early for breakfast? But as the hours passed, the truth became impossible to ignore. He wasn't coming back. By noon, she visited the bank. The receptionist gave her a confused look when she tried to access her business account. "I'm sorry, miss, it's not under your name anymore." Panic replaced confusion. She went straight to the company's headquarters. The security guard at the gate stopped her. "I'm really sorry, Miss Nina. We've been instructed not to let you inside unless cleared by the new owner." Her heart sank. Back home, Mrs. Laurel was waiting with a letter in her hand. Someone had slipped it under their door. Nina opened it. There were only 6 words. "You signed your life to me." Nina collapsed onto the couch, the letter trembling in her hand. Mrs. Laurel didn't speak. She simply sat beside Nina and held her close. That night, Nina didn't sleep. Instead, she sat in the dark staring at a picture of her parents. She whispered to them, promising she would fix what she had broken. The next morning, she picked up her phone, took a deep breath, and dialed the number of someone she hadn't spoken to in years. "Hello?" the voice answered. "Hi," she said, her voice steady. "I need your help." On the other end, a man named Darius leaned back in his chair. He was a private investigator. Smart, quiet, and very good at uncovering lies. "This is going to be dangerous," he warned after hearing her story. "I don't care," Nina replied. "He stole everything, and I'm taking it all back." Outside her window, the sky was starting to clear. The storm wasn't over, but Nina finally felt ready to walk into it. The first time Nina met Darius in person, it was raining. He wore a faded gray coat and walked with a slow, steady pace. His eyes were sharp, the kind that noticed everything without making you feel watched. He didn't say much at first. He just handed her a tissue when he saw her soaked sleeves and nodded toward a quiet cafe. "Start from the beginning," he said once they sat down. Nina told him everything, from meeting Callan to the moment she found her family's company stolen. Darius listened without interrupting, but every now and then he made small notes in a battered notebook. "He didn't just marry you," Darius finally said after a long pause. "He studied you. This was planned." Nina nodded. She had already started to believe that herself. In the days that followed, Darius moved quickly. He dug into Callan's past, finding gaps, hidden names, and one important thread. A woman named Frances who had filed a fraud complaint years ago against a man with a different name but the same face. Nina reached out to Frances. At first, Frances didn't respond, but after Darius shared her situation, Frances agreed to meet. They met in a quiet library where Frances arrived wearing dark glasses and a nervous smile. "He used to call himself Mason," Frances said. "We were engaged. He said he loved me. I signed over my half of the publishing business to him while I was recovering from surgery. Then he vanished." Nina felt a strange mix of anger and comfort. Anger that he had done this before. Comfort that she wasn't alone. "Did the police help you?" Nina asked. Frances laughed bitterly. "They said it was a civil matter. No crime, just a broken heart and a few missing papers." Nina clenched her fists. "I'm not letting him get away with it." With Frances's help, Darius built a timeline. They found hotel bookings, voice recordings, and bank transfers, all linked to Callan, though under different aliases. But the more they uncovered, the more dangerous things became. One night, Nina returned home to find her bedroom window slightly open. She was sure she had locked it before leaving. Nothing was missing, but the note on her pillow chilled her to the bone. "Stay quiet. You already lost." She didn't sleep that night. Neither did Mrs. Laurel, who insisted on moving into Nina's room with her. They sat side by side, a flashlight between them, whispering prayers. The next morning, Darius suggested they stay somewhere else. He booked them a temporary apartment under a false name. It wasn't much, but it felt safer. Even there, Nina felt watched. Her phone rang often. Unknown numbers, silent calls. Someone followed her once when she went to buy groceries. She only lost them by cutting through a narrow alley. "He's trying to scare you," Darius said. "He wants you to feel powerless." "It's working," Nina whispered. Darius looked at her and nodded slowly. "You feel afraid now, but that fear will pass. The truth always catches up." He then gave her something, a small necklace with a hidden voice recorder. "Wear this when you see him," he said. "If he confesses anything, we'll have proof." But Nina wasn't ready to see Callan. Not yet. Instead, she focused on getting stronger. She studied legal cases similar to hers. She met with a lawyer who explained how the signed documents might be reversed if they could prove fraud. Frances agreed to testify if needed. The pieces were coming together, but time was running out. Nina found out through a former employee that Callan was planning to sell her parents' company to a foreign investor in less than 2 months. "Once the sale is done," Darius warned, "it'll be almost impossible to reverse." Nina knew what she had to do. She called Callan from a new number and said she wanted to talk. She pretended to miss him, told him she regretted rushing into things. She invited him to a private dinner. He agreed, but his voice was cautious. "Why now?" he asked. "Because I realized I still love you," she lied. Callan arrived at the rented apartment with a smile, but his eyes scanned every corner. "This place is different," he said. "I needed a fresh start," Nina replied, forcing a smile. They sat at the table. She offered him tea. Her hands shook slightly, but she kept her voice calm. "I've been thinking about everything," she began. "The business, the documents, our future." Callan leaned forward. "What about them? I just want to understand, did you ever love me, or was I just part of some plan?" He laughed quietly, not noticing the recorder blinking at her neck. "Does it matter now? You signed the papers. I own it all." Nina's heart pounded, but she kept going. "Was it real? Any of it?" He leaned back and smiled. "You were useful. That's what matters." That was all she needed. The next morning, Darius sent the audio file to Nina's lawyer. "We've got him," he said. But Nina knew it wouldn't end that easily. Callan was dangerous, and he wouldn't go down without a fight. Nina stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her hands were cold, her stomach tight with nerves. She had spent the last few weeks preparing, but now that the moment was here, fear gripped her like a storm. Still, she knew there was no turning back. She had started something, and she needed to finish it. Darius had sent the audio recording to her lawyer, and it was enough to begin the legal process. They filed a fraud complaint, attached the evidence, and requested a court hearing to freeze the company's assets. But before anything could be done, they needed to make sure Callan didn't disappear. Nina knew he was planning something. He had started laying low, stopped answering unknown calls, and hadn't shown up at the office in days. His sudden silence made her more anxious than his threats. "He's preparing to vanish," Darius warned. "We have to act now." Nina came up with a risky plan. "I'll meet him again," she said. "But this time we'll trap him." Darius was hesitant. "He's not someone you want to corner, Nina. If he feels like he's losing, he might become violent." "I'll be careful," she said softly. "But we don't have time to be safe." Frances volunteered to help. She still remembered how Callan, then going by the name Mason, ruined her life. "I'll distract him," she offered. "Let him believe I've forgiven him. I want him to feel what it's like to be outsmarted." They set the meeting at a private location, a guest house Nina rented under a fake name. They added security, cameras, installed locks, and arranged for an undercover officer to be nearby just in case. On the night of the meeting, Nina stood behind the curtain, watching the gate. Frances waited by the entrance, pretending to smoke. She wore a calm face, but her heart was racing. This was the first time she had seen Callan in years. He arrived in a black car, stepping out with his usual confidence. He looked around, spotted Frances, and smiled like nothing had ever gone wrong between them. "You look the same," he said, walking toward her. "You don't," Frances replied. "But let's not waste time." They walked inside, and Nina listened from the next room. Through a small hidden speaker, she heard every word. "Why are you here, Frances?" Callan asked. "Because I'm tired of being angry," she lied. "I want to let go of the past." Callan laughed. "Funny. Most people don't forgive so easily." "Maybe I'm not most people." He leaned closer. "What do you want?" "I want in," she said. "You've already taken everything from Nina. Teach me how to do it. Let me be part of it." He stared at her for a long time, then smiled slowly. "So now, you want to join the winning side?" "Exactly." He chuckled. "You were always smarter than you looked." That was all Nina needed. She stepped into the room, recording still running, and faced him. "Game's over," she said. Callan's smile faded. His eyes darted between Nina and Frances. "What is this?" "Proof," Nina said. "We recorded everything. The fake names, the lies, the plan to steal the company." He moved toward her, but Darius stepped in from the hallway, blocking his path. "Don't," Darius warned. "It's over." Callan looked at Nina, his face hardening. "You think this is justice?" he sneered. "You think this ends with me getting arrested?" "It ends with the truth," Nina said. He paused for a second, then suddenly turned and ran. Before anyone could react, he was out the back door. Darius chased after him, but Callan disappeared into the night. The next few hours were filled with tension. The police arrived, reviewed the evidence, and issued a warrant for Callan's arrest. His bank accounts were frozen and a notice was placed on his passport. But Nina couldn't sleep. Every shadow in the room felt like him. Every sound outside made her jump. "He'll come back," she told Darius. "He's not done." Darius didn't argue. He simply stayed nearby, ready. 2 nights later, her fear came true. Nina was alone in the guest house trying to rest. She had just closed her eyes when the power went out. Everything went dark. Her phone rang, and a message appeared on the screen. "You wanted to finish this. Let's finish it." Her heart pounded. She grabbed the necklace Darius gave her and turned on the silent alarm. Within seconds, Darius and 2 officers were on their way. Meanwhile, Callan stepped into the house through the unlocked back door. He moved silently, like a shadow. "Nina," he called softly. "Let's not do this the hard way." She didn't answer. She stayed hidden, praying the police would arrive in time. Callan found her in the hallway. His smile was gone. His eyes were dark. "I gave you a chance," he said. "You should have stayed quiet." Just as he reached for her, the front door burst open. Darius tackled him to the ground. Police followed, weapons drawn. Callan was handcuffed within seconds. Nina collapsed to the floor, shaking but safe. As they led Callan away, he turned to look at her. "This isn't over," he whispered. Nina didn't flinch. "Yes," she replied. "It is." The courtroom was silent as the judge reviewed the final documents. Sunlight spilled through the high windows, casting a soft glow across the room. Nina sat at the front, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her heart beat fast, but her face remained calm. After everything she had been through, she had learned how to carry herself even when her world was shaking. Callan sat just a few feet away in a dark suit, hands cuffed. He no longer wore the charming smile that had once fooled her. Instead, he stared at the ground, expression unreadable. Beside Nina sat Francis and Darius. Mrs. Laurel was in the back row, quietly wiping a tear from her eye. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was firm but gentle. "Based on the evidence presented, the court finds the defendant guilty of fraud, identity theft, and coercion. The court also recognizes that the victim, Nina Hart, unknowingly signed over her property under manipulation and threat. All business assets and legal rights will be restored to her." Nina let out a quiet breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her body relaxed, though her heart still raced. The judge continued, sentencing Callan to 12 years in prison without parole. Callan didn't react. He just sat there, defeated. After the trial, Nina stepped outside the courthouse into the afternoon sun. The wind brushed her face gently. It felt different now, cleaner, freer. Darius stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. "It's over," he said. Nina looked at him and gave a small smile. "No, it's just beginning." That night she visited her parents' graves. She hadn't been there since the day Callan disappeared with her life in his hands. She knelt beside the stone markers, placed fresh flowers down, and whispered, "I got it all back. I hope I made you proud." A soft breeze blew through the trees, and she took it as their answer. 2 weeks later, Nina stood on a small stage in a community center. The room was full of women, some sitting quietly, others with tired eyes and worn faces. They had gathered to hear her story, not just the story of what happened, but how she survived. "There was a time," Nina said, "when I believed that love meant trust. But now I know that love must come with truth. I trusted the wrong man. I let my guard down. But that does not make me weak. And if any of you have been through something like this, know that you are not weak either. You are still here. And that means you are strong." The crowd clapped softly, many with tears in their eyes. Frances sat in the front row, smiling. After the event, a young girl approached Nina. "Thank you," she whispered. "Your story made me feel seen." Nina hugged her gently. "You are never alone." As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Nina began rebuilding her company. She renamed it New Bloom Enterprises, a symbol of growth after darkness. She hired new staff, many of them women who had been through hardship and needed a second chance just like she once did. Francis became her business partner. Darius moved to a nearby town but visited often. They remained close friends, bonded by the storm they had survived together. One morning, as Nina sat at her desk reviewing reports, a letter arrived. It was from the prison. She recognized the handwriting. It was from Callan. She opened it slowly, unsure of what she would find. "You may have won, but this is not the end." Nina folded the letter and placed it in a drawer without another thought. She would not give him power anymore, but deep down she knew there was one last part of her past still waiting in the shadows. 2 weeks later, she received a call from Francis. "There's something you should know," Francis said. He wasn't working alone. Nina froze. "What do you mean?" "I found someone," Francis continued. "A man who used to handle Callan's fake documents. He says there's a woman, someone close to you, who gave Callan information." Nina's heart skipped. "Who?" she asked. "He wouldn't say over the phone. But he wants to meet." Nina agreed. They arranged the meeting in a public cafe. When she arrived, the man looked nervous, glancing around before sitting down. "You have to be careful," he said. "This woman, she knew you. She told Callan things only someone close would know." Nina listened, every word sending a chill down her spine. He finally said the name, and everything made sense. Nina returned home that evening, her thoughts heavy. She stepped inside the house where Mrs. Laurel was waiting with a smile. "You're late," her aunt said. "Everything all right?" Nina studied her closely. The same woman who raised her, the woman who warned her about Callan, the woman who stood beside her during the trial. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat across from her and whispered, "Tell me the truth." Mrs. Laurel's smile faded. "What do you mean?" Nina's voice didn't shake. "You know what I mean." The silence in the room was louder than any scream. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, everything changed.